Welcome to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Portland District, virtual scoping meeting for the Environmental Impact Statement, or EIS, for the NEXT Renewable Fuels Oregon project. Please note this meeting is being recorded and it will be posted to the Corps' website. Today's scoping meeting is an important part of the Corps' responsibilities under the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. We value the public's input during the NEPA process. Thank you for your interest in the project and for taking the time to attend and participate in today's meeting. My name is Kate Mott, and I am the Corps' project manager for the NEXT Renewable Fuels Oregon LLC permit application. This meeting will provide information on the proposed project, it will provide an overview of the Corps' responsibilities under NEPA, and it will explain the NEPA scoping process. A representative from NEXT, the applicant, will also provide an overview of the proposed project. Lastly, we will collect and record oral comments for the scoping of the EIS. All comments, whether written or oral, will be considered equally. As a brief overview, the NEXT Renewable Fuels Oregon project is a proposal by NEXT Renewable Fuels Oregon LLC to construct and operate a renewable fuels facility at Port Westward in Columbia County, Oregon. The purpose of the proposed project is to produce renewable fuels for markets on the west coast of the United States. The image on the screen is a drawing that shows the layout of the proposed facility. The proposed project would be capable of producing 50,000 barrels per day of renewable diesel and other renewable fuel products. The production process would produce renewable fuels from a range of feedstocks, such as various vegetable oils, used cooking oil, animal tallow, and inedible corn oil. The facility would include various components such as storage tanks for feedstock and fuels, pipelines, refining units, an access road, a railroad spur, and railroad sidings. The project would rely on barges, ocean-going vessels, trains, and trucks, which would transport feedstock and the renewable fuels produced by the facility. The proposed project would permanently fill approximately 118 acres of wetlands and 1.8 acres of other waters. The project would also temporarily fill 32 acres of wetlands for a staging area during construction. To compensate for the wetland and water body losses, NEXT proposes to enhance 471.08 acres of nearby wetlands that are currently used for silviculture. The Portland District received an application from NEXT Renewable Fuels Oregon LLC for a Department of the Army permit to discharge, dredge, or fill material into waters of the United States. A Department of the Army permit is required for the project under Section 404 of the Clean Water Act. The Corps' decision whether to issue or deny a permit will be based on an evaluation of the probable impacts, including cumulative impacts, of the proposed project. The Corps' evaluation will consider numerous public interest review factors, and our evaluation will balance the favorable impacts against the detrimental impacts that may occur. This is known as the Corps' public interest review. The Corps will also evaluate the project under the Clean Water Act Section 404b1 guidelines. The 404b1 guidelines are regulations published by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. In accordance with the guidelines, no discharge of dredged or fill material shall be permitted if there is a practicable alternative to the proposed discharge which would have less adverse impact on the aquatic ecosystem. The proposed project would discharge dredge or fill material into wetlands. The Corps will evaluate the proposed project and other alternatives to determine if the project, as proposed, is the least environmentally damaging practicable alternative. As a federal agency, the Corps must also determine if the proposed project is consistent with certain federal laws, such as the Endangered Species Act and the National Historic Preservation Act. NEXT submitted an initial permit application to the Corps in January 2021 and a revised application in July 2021. The revised application expanded the proposed project and proposed a compensatory wetland mitigation site south of the facility site. The Corps received the information necessary for a complete application on October 29, 2021. On November 5th, the Corps issued a public notice to solicit comments on the proposed project. All comments received in response to the public notice will be considered in this scoping process. In December, the Corps determined the proposed project may significantly affect the quality of the human environment and thus required an EIS. On May 10, 2022, the Corps published a Notice of Intent to Prepare an EIS in the Federal Register. This notice initiated the EIS process and officially started the 30-day scoping period. The Corps will accept scoping comments until the scoping period ends on June 9th. The Corps is the lead federal agency under NEPA for the preparation of the EIS. The Corps invited several federal and state agencies and tribes to participate as cooperating agencies in the preparation of the EIS. At this time, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency is the only cooperating agency on the EIS. Under the current NEPA regulations, an applicant may prepare an EIS under the supervision of the lead federal agency. NEXT is preparing the EIS with their consultant, Stewardship Solutions Incorporated. As the lead federal agency, the Corps is responsible for the content, accuracy, and scope of the EIS. The Corps is also using a third-party contractor, SLR Consulting Limited, to provide the Corps technical assistance in the review of the EIS. SLR Consulting works at the sole direction of the Corps, but SLR services are paid for by NEXT. NEPA is a procedural statute intended to ensure federal agencies, such as the Corps, consider the environmental impact of their actions in the decision-making process. An EIS provides a full and fair discussion of the significant environmental impacts and informs decision-makers and the public of reasonable alternatives. The publication of the Notice of Intent to Prepare an EIS begins the scoping period. The purpose of the scoping period is to serve as a mechanism to solicit input on alternatives, identify significant issues to be analyzed in the EIS, and to ensure full and open participation in scoping for the draft EIS. Scoping allows the Corps to obtain input on the issues, alternatives, and any other factors you think should be included within the EIS. Scoping is intended to identify the significant environmental issues that warrant the most study and to identify insignificant issues that can be de-emphasized so as to narrow the analysis to those issues of genuine concern. Scoping comments need to be submitted to the Corps by June 9th, 2022. The objective of the scoping period is to hear from you. We need your input to identify project alternatives, resources to be considered, the breadth of environmental effects to be assessed, and new or unknown data or information sources. Your comments should be as specific as possible. Please focus your comments to those issues that you believe should be addressed in the EIS. The public will have an additional opportunity to comment when the draft EIS is published. Public participation is an important aspect of the NEPA process. Please visit our website to see the current status of the EIS process, to access notices, and to review the draft EIS when it becomes available. The preferred method for submitting comments is electronically. Please use the NEXT EIS email, which is nexteis@usace.army.mil, to submit comments or request to be added to the mailing list for the project. As the permit applicant, NEXT Renewable Fuels Oregon will now provide a short presentation on the proposed project. Please note, the Corps will complete an independent evaluation of the project. Views or opinions provided by NEXT are not representative of the Corps. Following the next presentation, we will accept oral scoping comments.
At NEXT, we're focused on leading the way in renewable fuels, starting right here in Oregon. Our goal is to provide clean, renewable fuel to fight the climate crisis and help create a healthier environment for all. Replacing fossil fuels is critical to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. That's why federal and state laws mandate the transition to cleaner fuels, like renewable diesel. The EPA established the U.S. Renewable Fuel Standard, requiring refiners and importers to blend renewable fuels into petroleum diesel in an effort to curb transportation emissions. Oregon, California, and Washington have all also adopted state regulations requiring reductions in greenhouse gas emissions in the transportation sector. These policies are designed to decrease the carbon intensity of transportation fuel, reduce petroleum dependency, improve air quality, and provide an increasing range of low-carbon and renewable fuel alternatives. Just last year, the state of Oregon also created the Climate Protection Program, which aims to dramatically reduce greenhouse gas emissions over the next 30 years. Each of these programs and policies share a critical goal: to collectively alter the path of climate change and improve public health by reducing the amount of carbon in our atmosphere. To support these efforts, NEXT plans to construct and operate a facility that produces renewable diesel. Renewable diesel is made from biomass and waste products like used cooking oil, animal tallows, and fish grease. And because it's made from biomass, renewable diesel is 60 to 80% cleaner than petroleum diesel and reduces the amount of harmful toxins that get into our air and water. This reduction leads to improved air quality from the moment it is used. In fact, it's anticipated that using NEXT Renewable Diesel will result in an annual reduction of more than 7 million tons of greenhouse gases. That's like taking 1 million cars off the road every year. Local leaders know that renewable fuels are vital to a cleaner transportation future. They also know about the significant economic benefits associated with the growing clean fuels industry in Oregon. Oregon Environmental Quality Director Richard Whitman wrote in The Oregonian, "In rural areas of Oregon, renewable fuels are a big part of a cleaner transportation future. Renewable fuels production and refining are burgeoning industries in Oregon, creating hundreds of new, high-paying jobs." And Metro President Lynn Peterson testified to the Oregon legislature that switching to renewable diesel was the single most impactful climate action that Metro could take to reduce emissions. At NEXT, we're focused on creating renewable diesel with a very low carbon footprint to help double up on those emissions savings. That's why our renewable diesel is made from would-be waste like used French fry oil and fish grease. And because it works as an immediate and complete drop-in replacement for petroleum diesel, renewable diesel can be used in trucks, buses, trains, barges, farm and construction equipment, or any engine that currently uses petroleum diesel without having to make any upgrades or retrofits. As Joey Williams, manager of the vehicle fleet for the city of Oakland, said, "It was a seamless transition. You pick up a phone, place a call for renewable diesel, and you start using it that day." The NEXT facility will operate on 133 acres of industrial zoned land located within a public port. Our industrial property is adjacent to an ethanol plant, a liquid fuels terminal, agricultural operations, and 3 power plants. Utilities like water, electrical, and gas are already nearby, making our site shovel-ready. Core components of our facility include a new main access road, a rail branch line, product and feedstock tanks, a pretreatment plant, hydrogen processing equipment, 3 eco-fining units, a storm and process water system, administration buildings, and a laboratory. For the good of the planet and the longevity of our operations, NEXT is also committed to keeping our carbon intensity as low as possible throughout the life cycle of our product. But what does that mean? Carbon intensity measures how much carbon is released into the atmosphere per unit of energy consumed. Importantly, carbon intensity examines the life cycle of the fuel, the feedstock, production, mode of transportation, and use in vehicles. Ultimately, energy sources with low carbon intensity levels emit fewer greenhouse gases when they produce energy. That means we will use feedstocks with a low carbon intensity. When feedstock arrives at our facility, it goes through a pre-treatment process to remove impurities. Purified feedstock then enters a specialized eco-fining system that uses a hydrogen reactant to create clean, renewable diesel. That renewable diesel is then stored in tanks before being transferred to ships for delivery. At full operation, we will produce 50,000 barrels of renewable diesel per day. That's enough to transition the entire diesel demand in Oregon to greener, cleaner fuel. NEXT's feedstock will be supplied almost exclusively from marine vessels unloading at Port Westward's existing deep draft dock. Using existing shipping operations reduces impacts to rail and highway systems. However, we will still require some railcar service to the site. NEXT will primarily use rail cars to receive bleaching clay for the pretreatment process. In the event of maritime service interruption, rail access also provides an important emergency backup. Our dedicated branch line will split from Portland Western's A line and Port Westward's existing spur. NEXT has planned for adequate rail siding, which is necessary to meet logistical requirements of the rail providers. The facility is also designed with a number of secure entry points, but the majority of road access will come and go using Hermo Road, with emergency access available through Kolunki Road. Renewable diesel deliveries will be shipped up and down the West Coast, from Canada to Southern California. Public transit agencies like Portland's TriMet, LA's Metrolink, and Oakland's City Fleet have all begun replacing petroleum diesel with renewable diesel, and demand continues to grow. We want to help meet that demand while also further helping the unique ecosystems near our facility. The Oregon Department of State Lands analyzed potential impacts to wetlands, and in March 2022, the agency approved our mitigation plan to restore 471 acres of wetlands. This plan will turn a disused single-species tree farm into diverse habitat for local wildlife, plants, and pollinators. We will avoid negative impacts to the surrounding area and will construct meandering water channels to ensure appropriate water flow within the Beaver Drainage District. These restored wetlands will create natural groundwater filtration and help protect neighboring agricultural operations from flooding during storm events. For more information, please visit nextrenewables.com or email your questions to info@nextrenewables.com. Thank you.
This concludes the presentations on the EIS process and the project proposed by NEXT. The Corps included a presentation by NEXT as the project proponent. However, as a reminder, the Corps does not endorse or concur with the views, opinions, or testimonials provided by NEXT. The Corps will complete an independent evaluation of the proposed project subject to this permit application. We will now begin the oral comment period of this meeting. You will have up to 3 minutes to speak. If you finish early, we will move on to the next commenter. You may not transfer your speaking time to another participant. If you are still speaking after 3 minutes, we will mute your microphone. If you no longer wish to provide an oral comment, you may simply say pass, and we will move on to the next participant. Written comments and oral comments will be considered equally. We will begin with the registered speakers. Please listen for your name to be announced when it is your turn to speak. Begin by stating and spelling your name. If you are representing an organization, please say so at the beginning of the delivery of your public comments. For example, John Smith, JOHN representing organization name. If you wish to comment and you are not registered, use the chat feature to message our meeting moderator. They will confirm your request. Then simply wait for your name to be announced, accept the option to unmute yourself, and deliver your comments. If you are participating by phone and are not registered, press *9 to request commenting time. Listen for the last 4 digits of your phone number to be announced, press *6 to unmute, and deliver your comments. To avoid feedback when speaking, we suggest turning off your computer audio. Use of inappropriate language, personal attacks, or profanity will not be tolerated. Continued use of inappropriate language will require us to end your speaking time and move on to the next commenter. As mentioned before, please listen for your name, accept the option to unmute yourself, state and spell your first and last name, and state if you are representing an agency or organization. The timer will start when you begin to provide your comments. Please focus your scoping comments on those issues that should be analyzed in the EIS. If you have any questions, visit our website at the web address below. As mentioned earlier, you may submit written comments until June 9th, 2022, and will have an additional opportunity to provide comments when the draft EIS is published. Aaron Bragg of SLR Consulting will now lead the comment portion of this meeting.
Good evening. I will call the commenter currently up and the following commenter to keep our process orderly and moving forward. If you encounter technical difficulties trying to unmute your mic, we will move forward onto the next speaker and return to you after for another try. Please forgive me for any name mispronunciations. We will begin with our registered speakers. We understand that life happens and you might not have made it to the meeting, but we will call your name anyway. You may be using a different name on your Zoom. If so, please raise your hand so we have the ability to unmute your mic. Our first commenter is Neil Anderson, followed by Philip Norman. You will have 3 minutes to speak. Neil Anderson, please unmute yourself by pressing *6, state your name and spell it for the record.
Hi, my name is Neil Anderson, Nealanderson, and my comment relates to the feedstocks that will be used for the project. On their website, they mentioned several times that the renewable diesel will be made from organic materials, such as used cooking oil, which would be great if that's all they use, but on their fact sheet, they show they'll also use soy and seed oil, which aren't quite as benign because they increase the total demand for agricultural products, which results in more overall land being cleared for farming. The tilling that this requires releases carbon dioxide stored in the soil. In addition, the use of fertilizer causes that soil to release nitrous oxide, another powerful greenhouse gas. And the production of that extra fertilizer has large carbon footprint as well. All of that needs to be taken into account when assessing the environmental impact of this project. The soy oil that they intend to use has an additional problem. The NEXT website does say they won't use virgin palm oil, but soy farms are also one of the biggest drivers of deforestation in the tropics. Any increase in demand for soy drives increased production and ultimately puts pressure on the rainforests, potentially impacting one of the most important carbon sinks on the planet. So this is something the EIS should take into account also. And I understand that part of their process will include converting methane gas to hydrogen. This creates an enormous amount of carbon dioxide since the conversion is so inefficient. But in addition, a significant amount of methane leaks throughout the entire supply chain. Methane is a much more powerful greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide, so it's important that this be accounted for accurately. Top-down measurements taken recently show much higher methane leak rates than the conventional bottom-up calculations. So the latest science needs to be used in assessing what the actual leak rate is likely to be. Also, it's typical to use the 100-year average when calculating the warming effect of methane. But given that climate impacts are already starting to be felt, and that several tipping points are thought to be dangerously close, short-term effects are becoming much more important, so the EIS should also consider the 20-year average when accounting for the impact of methane. This project is being justified as a way to reduce greenhouse emissions by displacing fossil fuels. So please make sure all direct and indirect greenhouse emissions from the feedstocks are included, as well as the emissions from the project, so that this can be assessed fully and accurately. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We will now move on to Philip Norman, who will be followed by Kevin Andrews. You will have 3 minutes to comment. Philip Norman, please unmute yourself, state your name, and spell it for the record. I don't believe Philip is here right now, so we will move forward to Kevin Andrews, who will be followed by Dina Grossman. You will have 3 minutes to comment. Kevin Andrews, please unmute yourself, state your name, and spell it for the record.
Hello, is that working? Can you hear me?
Yes, you are good to go.
Excellent. My name is Kevin Andrews, Andrews. To the Army Corps of Engineers, I respectfully insist that your department conduct a full and thorough EIS on the proposed renewable diesel refinery. To date, I have not seen a broad and in-depth analysis of the potential impacts from the proposed rail yard, the proposed docking facility, and the proposed refinery. I've been recently made aware of the site being on the Lewis and Clark Trail, which would make it significant for historical reasons. I'm very concerned about the damage to the dikes and levees that will occur with the abundance of construction traffic, and cannot find any mention of the requirement for the project to maintain and upkeep these very fragile systems. I'm also very concerned about the impact this proposed facility would have on this community. I live and work here. This project if allowed to go forward, will emit over 1 million tons per year of climate changing pollution, making this one of Oregon's largest potential emitters. What is the potential impact of an additional 400 to 600 cars and trucks going to work daily with a staff of 250 people? Then they're coming in and out twice a day, not to mention a 400 car rail spur in this rural neighborhood. I also have a very high concern for the potential of environmental impact with spills and pollution with the refinery in this agriculture neighborhood. I have a bunch of more concerns, but that's enough to get us started. I must confess I do work in the oil and gas industry and have worked in facilities like this in 36 different states. I even once had an office at Port Westward right next to the proposed site, and I enjoyed the bald eagles nesting 100 feet away from my window at my desk. I do believe these projects can be done correctly. I'm wrapping up a $3 billion project that has built into it a wildlife preservation sanctuary and a wetland preservation. These are done all the time around the world. I haven't seen a concern for our sensitive salmon habitat, white-tailed deer, bald eagles, and osprey that live at this proposed facility mentioned in any of the studies to date. From all that I've seen from the NEXT and Renewable Diesel project, I'm convinced it's the wrong project in the wrong location by the wrong people. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We will now move on to Dina Grossman, who will be followed by Nicole Snyder. You will have 3 minutes to comment. Dina Grossman, please unmute yourself, state your name, spell it for the record, and remember, if you are with an affiliate, please say so. We will now move on to Nicole Snyder, who will be followed by Linda Leonard. You will have 3 minutes to comment. Nicole Snyder, please unmute yourself, state your name, and spell it for the record. We will now move on to Linda Leonard, who will be followed by Jean Avery. You will have 3 minutes to comment. Linda, please press *6 to unmute yourself, state your name, and spell it for the record. I believe Linda is here, and so I will come back to her in a moment. We will now move on to Jean Avery, who will be followed by Haley Vocal. You will have 3 minutes to comment. Jean Avery, please unmute yourself, state your name, and spell it for the record.
There we go. I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, you have it. Good to go.
Excellent. My name is Jean Avery, Jean, last name AV like Victor, ERY. I'm commenting on my own behalf. I am a resident of Vancouver, Washington. I'm also a member of Audubon Society and an avid bird watcher. I have visited this area on a bird watching trip earlier. It is a very beautiful natural area. I'm looking at my notes from the earlier hearing, and my notes indicate that section 1120 indicates that there is not sensitive bird habitat in this proposed construction area. But I would call your attention to the Julia Butler Hanson National Wildlife Refuge in Washington and the Lewis and Clark National Wildlife Refuge in Oregon. These are important birding areas. I support local residents and farmers in opposing this project. A full EIS is required to assess the impact on sensitive natural areas, wildlife, and the climate. NEXT's plan would damage wetlands. It would impact farmland, wildlife, and sensitive habitat. It would also pose risks to the Columbia River and surrounding communities. Port Westward's bucolic scenery would be ruined forever by a 350-foot tall flare stack and a 400-car rail yard. These impacts cannot be mitigated. NEXT would refine hundreds of millions of gallons of diesel each year at a time when our climate demands clean, renewable energy. A thorough EIS review is needed to stop this out-of-state company from pursuing this ill-advised project. Thank you for taking my comment. Good evening.
Thank you for your comments. We will now go back to Linda Leonard. Linda, you will have 3 minutes to comment. Please press *6 to unmute yourself, state your name, and spell it for the record.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Linda Leonard. I'll spell it Linda, last name Leonard, Leonard, a resident of Kalama, Washington. I support the Corps' decision to conduct the comprehensive EIS of NEXT refinery proposal. I urge the Corps to manage a wide-ranging analysis that fully considers all direct, indirect, and cumulative impacts related to the refinery, rail yard, neighboring farms, residents, communities, and the lower Columbia River. Next proposed project will have a large gas input, including the hydrogen created from fracked gas. This input will cause more pollution than what is acknowledged, especially if all the methane leaks and emissions are accounted for. Methane leaks associated with fracked gas consumption are a significant source of climate change pollution. Methane, when it escapes into the atmosphere, has a global warming impact 87 times more potent than carbon dioxide on a 20-year time frame, 36 times more potent on the 100-year time frame. For the foreseeable future, significant methane leakage will accompany all fracked gas extraction, transportation, and delivery. Recent studies estimate that roughly 3% of all fracked gas is released into the atmosphere before it reaches an end use. This information is Avatar's assessment of methane emissions, and the other source, frack gas, there is nothing natural about it. NEXT Renewable Fuel has a major non-renewable component, the frack gas used to make hydrogen. The Corps' memorandum for record states, with the exception of the impacts on wetlands, the Corps has not yet determined that other detrimental effects may be significant. Now, for existence, although the project may be a substantial new source of greenhouse gas emissions in Oregon, the Corps has not yet determined whether these impacts may be significant. This project will emit over 1 million tons per year of climate.
Thank you for your comments. We will now move on to Haley Vocal, who will be followed by Linda Horst. You will have 3 minutes to comment. Haley Vocal, please unmute yourself, state your name and spell it for the record.
Hi, my name is Haley Vocal, Haley, V as in Victor, Oekel, and I live in Clatskanie on Quincy Mega Road. I'm very much in favor of an environmental impact statement being conducted. I read that the Corps, as the lead agency under the National Environmental Policy Act, has determined that this proposed project may significantly affect the quality of the human environment. I'm very much questioning what the cumulative effect to the waterways and our human health over the years, not just from NEXT, but also that's already an industrial site with a biorefinery and a power plant that is already emitting toxins into our water and air. We already get smells pretty often, and pollution from bad smells from the Wana Mill, the Longview Industrial Complex, and the industry that's already present at the port. So I hope that the cumulative effect of all of that industry, along with what NEXT is planning to pollute, will be taken into consideration. I'm really questioning how much the Columbia River can take. It's already quite compromised. And I hope that we consider not just the plant itself that NEXT would like to build, but also all the pollution caused by the trucks, barges, trains, and pipelines that NEXT would like to run and also build. I don't actually trust that this company will continue as a biodiesel plant, given the history of the owners and what happened in Odessa, Washington. I wouldn't at all be surprised if, they sold it and suddenly we have trains shipping tar sands oil, or it shuts down and we're left with a huge toxic waste site, just like what happened in Odessa, Washington. There's no reason not to think that kind of thing won't happen, as it has already happened and we have good examples of it. Another thing I'm concerned about is NEXT plans to install approximately 15,200 16-inch steel piles that are 90 feet long, and also concrete piles. And I don't know a lot about engineering or construction, but just the necessity of that many pilings brings a lot of concern about the foundation with which they're building on, and whether that's a place that a giant industrial site even is realistic. And we're setting ourselves up for a large earthquake that could really send all this into our beautiful river and really pollute the area for maybe lifetimes.
Thank you for your comments. We will now move on to Linda Horst, who will be followed by Patrick Dunn. You will have 3 minutes. If you need to reference the timer going on the screen, please do so. Linda Horst, please press *6 to unmute yourself, state your name, and spell it for the record.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. Okay. I'm speaking for myself. My name is Linda Horst. That is Linda, Linda Horst. I live in Kelso, Washington. I support the Corps' decision to conduct a comprehensive EIS of the NEXT refinery proposal. I urge the Corps to manage a wide-ranging analysis that fully considers all direct, indirect, and cumulative impacts related to the refinery, rail yard, neighboring farms, residents, communities, and the lower Columbia River. In reading the memorandum review by NEPA subject matter expert Joseph Brock, he states the Corps' reasons for conducting this EIS and notes that the Corps' anticipation of negative impacts to a variety of resources and states. Then under item number 10, scope of analysis, Mr. Brock highlights some rather alarming facts. The proposed facility site is predominantly wetland. Of the 145-acre proposed facility site, 138 acres are wetlands and waterways. Thus, only a mere 7.5 acres are fully usable uplands within the facility site boundary. Mr. Brock further details in item number 11, level of NEPA review, that the next project would result in the loss of 119 acres of U.S. waters. This would be 81 times greater than the median loss for development projects in Oregon, and 3 times greater than the largest water loss authorized in Oregon in the last 10 years. Moreover, during the same 10-year period, the Corps has issued only 8 permits for development of Oregon projects that would have resulted in losses greater than 10 acres of water. Those Corps authorized losses for the 8 permits only range from 10.5 acres to 37 acres, a very long way from next loss of 119 acres of U.S. waters. Mr. Brock then concludes, quote, the degree of effects on wetlands from the proposed project far exceed that of typical development projects in Oregon, unquote. This information leads me to ask, why locate this world's second largest biofuels refinery on this postage stamp upland footprint amid sensitive wetlands and farms? Thank you for the opportunity to comment in this EIS process. I will also submit written scoping comments.
Thank you for your comments. We will now move on to Patrick Dunn, who will be followed by Lauren Hogan Bays. You will have 3 minutes to comment. Patrick Dunn, please unmute yourself, state your name, and spell it for the record. We will now move on to Lauren Hogan Bays, who will be followed by David Paraska. You will have 3 minutes to comment. Lauren Hogan Bays, please unmute yourself, state your name, and spell it for the record. We will now move on to David Paraska, who will be followed by Emma Parker. You will have 3 minutes to comment. David Paraska, please unmute yourself, state your name, and spell it for the record. I believe Lauren Hogan Bays is here. You will have 3 minutes to comment. Lauren Hogan Bays, please unmute yourself, state your name, and spell it for the record.
Hello, this is Lauren Hogan Bays, L-A-R-E-N, H-O-G-E-N, B-A-Y-S. I'm a local resident here in Clatskanie. We're looking at the site of the next site. I have several concerns. I hope that the 4 points that are included in the environmental impact statement by the Army Corps of Engineers. First is a thorough investigation, a thorough look at the total supply chain of things that are coming into the plant from barges, trains, trucks, both for manufacturing, for construction, and then for distribution. The amount of things coming into the plant is going to be greater than the 50,000 gallons that are going out. So that's going to have a larger impact on this region. Second, I am concerned about the stability of the land if it requires the 15,000 at least pilings, 90 feet deep. The stability of the land in the middle of the river, or on the edge of the river like that, is questionable in my mind. Secondly, this is an area that every winter we have air quality alerts and air quality advisories. And so I hope that there'll be a thorough investigation of the effects of the CO2, methane, and other pollutants that'll be released during this. And lastly, the ramifications for the local community will be significant. They're anticipating during construction twice the population of this area of people coming in and going out for that. And that's going to completely shift what this environment is like to live in. So I'm looking forward to a thorough, comprehensive investigation of both short and long-term effects. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We will skip back to Patrick Dunn. Patrick Dunn, you will have 3 minutes to comment. Please unmute yourself, state your name, and spell it for the record.
Hi, my name is Patrick Dunn, Patrickdunn. Good evening, everyone. Thanks to the Army Corps for undertaking this assessment and for receiving public comments on the proposed NEXT facility. As a public organization, the Army Corps has been empowered to influence industrial projects such as this one and to intervene in ways that will promote the well-being of everyone who might be affected. This is indeed a great responsibility, and I appreciate your willingness to be transparent and accountable to the local community. I'm speaking now as a local resident, having lived for 9 years at Great Vows and Monastery just down the road from the proposed site. Also as a clergy member and as a person of conscience, concerned about the sustainability of local economies and about the health and harmony of this bioregion and of the larger web of life. The limited information the public has received about NEXT's proposal indicates impacts that are immediate and far-reaching. Here at the monastery, we maintain a peaceful sanctuary where people of all walks of life come from all over the world to connect with their own deepest life questions and life purpose. The introduction into our neighborhood of yet another production facility with the air, noise, odor, water quality, and traffic impacts that this would entail would be definitely disruptive and might actually deter folks from traveling here to support the monastery and to nourish the local economy. Furthermore, the impact on local farmland, wetlands, and wildlife would be severe. As you carry out your assessment, I urge you to consider these and other impacts, including those that are overlooked by NEXT Renewables in its own planning. How will this project affect local salmon habitats? What is the potential for spills and other unforeseen accidents? What levels of soil contamination can be expected at and around the site? How would the project compound pollution from facilities already operating at the site? Empowered as you are, I finally encourage you to seriously consider alternatives to this proposal that might be better adapted to the environment and to the larger state of the world. For example, the use of fracked gas is something that warrants close scrutiny. What would a better alternative be? You're in a unique position to influence this project. Please act from a place of conscience with full awareness of the responsibility you've been entrusted with. Thank you for receiving these comments.
Thank you for your comments. We will now move on to Emma Parker, who will be followed by Marguerite Winter. You will have 3 minutes to comment. Emma Parker, please unmute yourself, state your name, and spell it for the record.
Hello, my name is Emma Parker, EMMAPARKER. I am a current resident here in Clatskanie, residing fairly close by to the proposed refinery site. And I'm speaking to strongly urge the Corps to conduct a thorough EIS that takes into account the myriad cumulative and connected effects of NEXT proposed refinery, which includes the refinery itself, the rail yard, and the dock at Port Westward, with spill risks, odor and noise, air pollution, discharge of dredged material. The very fact that this project is this project, if completed to the current standards of the proposal, would be one of Oregon's largest GHG polluters, emitting over 1 million tons per year. The project would have unavoidable and severe effects on the sensitive lands that we live on the community that we live within. Looking at water pollution alone, keeping in mind that the impacts of this project are, as I said, interconnected and wide-reaching, we know that the lower Columbia River is a critical area for salmon recovery and survival. We know that the project's impact would directly conflict Oregon's existing laws for protecting clean water. So I asked the Army Corps a few questions, specifically, what is knowing your regional approach to salmon recovery and restoration, how would assessing this proposed refinery align with those already stated ideals and restrictions? We know the water resources in the area sustain agriculture uses and surrounding delicate wetlands, and that the proposed site is, as mentioned by a previous speaker, mainly consisted of wetlands. I believe it is our utmost responsibility as the community in Clatskanie to advocate for both the land that we live in, the economy that we sustain ourselves on, and the community of human beings that we work to take care of. And it is the responsibility it's the responsibility of the Corps to use the power which they do have to help us maintain what is precious and deeply important. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We will now move on to Marguerite Winter, who will be followed by Jan Bays. You will have 3 minutes to comment. Marguerite, please unmute yourself, state your name and spell it for the record.
Hello, I'm Margot Winter, MARGAUX WINTER. I currently live across the street from Port Westward, and I'm speaking as an emerging climate scientist with a degree in chemistry from Harvard University and a current PhD candidate in the field of atmospheric chemistry at UC Berkeley. I support the Army Corps of Engineers' decision to conduct a full EIS of the NEXT Renewable Diesel project. And I strongly urge the Corps to consider the cumulative health and environmental effects of VOC emissions from the proposed NEXT Renewables plant. The proposed plant will emit levels of VOCs that approach the 100 ton per year limit, which categorizes this plant as a major source of emissions under the Title V of the Clean Air Act. Additionally, VOC emissions would also occur from industrial activity such as trains coming and going, marine shipments, and increased automobile traffic, as well as a large flare stack that are all necessary to keep the plant running. As many of us know, these emitted VOCs propagate chemical cycles that lead to adverse atmospheric outcomes, such as elevated tropospheric ozone concentrations and the formation of secondary organic aerosols and particulate matter. Increased concentrations of tropospheric ozone and particulate matter have been shown to cause lung damage, worsen respiratory diseases. They are associated with increased mortality and decreased crop yield. Tropospheric ozone productions occurs when these emitted VOCs are oxidized in the presence of nitrogen oxides and sunlight. In the case of the plant, these nitrogen oxides would be emitted from the facility's combustion processes, and notably, all the additional industrial activity from automotive, such as trains, lead to a large amount of NOx, as well as from surrounding agricultural emissions of soil NOx. An evaluation of the total VOC emissions associated with the plant and connected industrial activity are required to determine the summed amount of ozone production from this plant, which provides critical information about the facility's impact on human health and the environment. I strongly urge the Corps to consider the direct and indirect health and environmental impacts of the plant's impact on tropospheric ozone. The AIS must address how all industrial activity associated with the construction and maintenance of the plant would lead to adverse human health and environmental impacts. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We will now move on to Jan Bays, who will be followed by Dan Saris. You will have 3 minutes to comment. Jan Bays, please unmute yourself, state your name, and spell it for the record.
Okay, I just figured out how to unmute. My name is Judith or Jan Bays. I'm a physician and I live at Great Vow Zen Monastery on Quincy Mega Road. I live in direct sight, sound, and odor line of the proposed NEXT facility. I thank the Army Corps of Engineers for protecting our precious environment and listening to citizens who will be negatively affected by this plant. I respectfully ask that the Corps do a comprehensive EIS for the long-term overall environmental impact of the proposed biodiesel plant on local air, land, and water, and on the health and quality of life for people, animals, wildlife, and plants in the area. I also request that the Corps of Engineers factor in the environmental impact of removing prime agricultural land from farming uses that absorb carbon dioxide and produce oxygen in order to allow a plant that will use fracked gas and release carbon dioxide and methane. How ironic that the plant would take agricultural land out of use and then ship in plant stock that is grown elsewhere. Please also take into account the compounded effect on the community of emissions from the 2 adjacent plants or the marine and rail terminals, increased truck and car traffic, or spikes in emissions during flares. One article I read said, making biodiesel is a messy and malodorous affair. The odor from biodiesel plants has been described as rotten eggs, that is hydrogen sulfide, causing nausea, headaches, and eye irritation that forces local residents to remain indoors. Another article stated that residents of Carthage, Missouri were so offended by the nauseating smell coming from a biofuel plant that Missouri's governor closed it down. Oregon law covering odor emission has no teeth, and we will have no effective recourse once the plant is up and running if there are noxious odors. We have served this community for over 20 years. We have hosted about 1,000 people each year for classes, silent meditation retreats, and national conferences. These guests and residents often comment on our fresh, clean rural air. They are quite aware of the harmful oxidizing and potentially carcinogenic effects of volatile organic compounds like ozone upon the human body and upon animals, plants, and plant crops in the area, including our own organic garden. This plant could ruin our business. For these and other reasons, I ask that a comprehensive EIS be done. Thank you, Corps of Engineers, for your very valuable work.
Thank you for your comments. We will now move on to Dan Sears, who will be followed by Heather Moen. You will have 3 minutes to comment. Dan Sears, please press *6 to unmute yourself, state your name and spell it for the record.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. My name is Dan Sears, DANSERRES, and I'm the Conservation Director for Columbia Riverkeeper. The NEXT refinery and rail yard pose significant risks to neighbors and the lower Columbia River. We urge the Army Corps of Engineers to take a hard look at all of the impacts of the proposed refinery, rail yard, pipelines, dock operations, marine shipments, and other aspects of the project. The proposal has the potential to dramatically impact the Columbia River, including by introducing new spill risks associated with the handling and storage of hundreds of millions of gallons of diesel each year, as well as other products. The proposal will include over 1 million barrels of diesel, jet fuel, and feedstock storage, a new threat to the lower Columbia River in the midst of wetlands, sensitive groundwater, deep peat soils, and liquefaction and earthquake risks. The Corps should consider the full impacts of multiple potential spills, leaks, and failures in the event of a major earthquake, for instance. The proposal has the potential to impact the Beaver Drainage District and nearby dikes. According to the National Levee Database, quote, there is a relatively high likelihood of overtopping, end quote, with respect to this dike, and other resolved issues with the dike's adequacy raise major concerns for those who live in the area. The operation and construction impacts of the next project could affect dikes, could affect infrastructure that extends to dikes in the drainage district. The alteration of local area drainage ditches and the establishment of the rail yard, refinery, pipelines, and mitigation all have the potential to impact area infrastructure and hydrology. The Corps should independently evaluate these issues rather than relying on NEXT dubious claims that they can build a refinery and a 400-car rail yard issue-free in such a sensitive area. Accordingly, it seems possible that a Section 408 permit is also required. The Corps website states and makes clear that Section 408 provides that the Corps may grant permission for another party to alter a civil works project only if it would not be injurious to the public interest. It would not impair the usefulness of the project. In this case, the impacts are potentially very significant and could negatively impact both the public interest and infrastructure in this area in a variety of ways. We urge the Corps to look at all of the direct, indirect, and cumulative impacts of the project and its connected activities, a requirement under NEPA and a necessity for a hard look review. The Corps should consider dock use, waterway and marine impacts from the project, the energy demands and impacts from the project and its fracked gas-based hydrogen source, and the cumulative impacts of the industrial facilities at Port Westward. The impacts of shipping over 700 million gallons of diesel and other products, in addition to feedstock shipments, are significant and warrant review in the CIS. We look forward to submitting additional comments in writing, and thank you for holding this hearing.
Thank you for your comments. We will now move on to Heather Moen. You will have 3 minutes to comment. Heather Moen, please unmute yourself, state your name, and spell it for the record. That concludes our registered speakers. We will now move on to the attendees who have requested to speak via the chat feature. Again, if you have dialed in by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand if you would like to speak. We will now move on to Paul Phillip, who will be followed by Wiley Myers. You will have 3 minutes to comment. Paul, please unmute yourself, state your name, and spell it for the record.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Paul Philpott, PaulPhilpott, and I am a member engagement representative for the Northwest Carpenters Union and also a resident of Rainier, Oregon and Columbia County. We live in a critical and transitional time, one where we must bravely face the uncertainty that immediate threats such as climate change have on our collective future. It is with that in mind that I have come this evening to give comments in support of NEXT Renewable Fuels Renewable Diesel Project at Port Westward. We must focus our attention and efforts on securing green jobs like those afforded by this project in our community. These jobs our young people can secure in apprenticeships to build into union-backed careers, family wage jobs that local workers deserve, and that will help minimize the climate impacts of our members' typical out-of-county commutes. Jobs that will put Oregon on the renewable fuels map. Jobs that will make future generations proud while equipping the current generation with opportunities to stand on the right side of a concerning climate history. Our community has a unique opportunity to usher in a new wave of green fuel solutions, starting with this renewable fuel facility, and we should embrace it, both for the sustainability of our planet and also for the sustainability of our local economy. Rarely does doing what's right for the community and the environment come together in a single project, but that's what's happening with the NEXT Renewable Fuels project. There is no reason to stand in the way of a project with such a direct and positive impact on green job prospects and the environment. I urge you to support NEXT Renewable Fuels and for the Army Corps of Engineers to move through the EIS process without delay so that local union construction workers can begin to build this important and beneficial facility. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We will now move on to Willie Myers, who will be followed by Deborah Hazen. You will have 3 minutes to comment. Willie Myers, please unmute yourself, state your name, and spell it for the record.
Hello, my name is Willie Myers, WILLYMYERS, and I'm here representing Columbia Pacific Building and Construction Trades Council. As a union leader in Oregon, I have been working to rally support and direct labor backing for the NEXT Renewable Diesel project at Port Westward. This project exceeds the high bar established by the DEQ's Oregon Clean Fuels program, which is hailed as a key solution to the climate crisis. It provides both a local resource for cleaner, greener fuel, renewable diesel, and additionally, by reducing life cycle greenhouse gas emissions by up to 80%. It creates a net positive climate impact equivalent to taking 1 million vehicles off the road every year. The environmental benefits are clear. I'm here this evening to tie those environmental benefits back into workforce benefits too. This renewable diesel facility will create 3,500 family wage jobs during construction and 240 full-time, long-term green jobs during operation. These jobs, per both a memorandum of understanding with the Columbia Pacific Building Trades and the Pacific Northwest Regional Council of Carpenters, and per a card check agreement with United Food and Commercial Workers, U.S.C. W555, will be union jobs, quality jobs, family wage jobs, apprentice to career, learn as you earn jobs. In a time where large corporations like Amazon and Starbucks actively dismiss and attack union organizing, this is a welcome and refreshing approach to corporate leadership, an approach that should help Oregonians feel confident in the long-term success and sustainability of the facility. My focus now as a union leader is to shine the light on projects like this and to support their development, projects that will meet the climate catastrophe head on and right now, while also keeping workers' rights and community wellness at their core. Specifically, I feel it is my duty to my current members and the future of their families and our interconnected communities to support projects that move us away from fossil fuels that are actively making our planet more dangerous to inhabit. NEXT Renewable Fuels is providing our state an important and timely opportunity, a tangible project that will help Oregon truly claim our seat at the helm of responsible, active leadership in the face of a climate catastrophe. It is one that our current government leadership should champion as a proof point in their ambitions around cultivating a vigorous green economy in Oregon, a green economy backed by the blue collar labor of union workers, a green economy with the future of our humanity at its core. Let Oregon lead from the front with confidence by advocating for opportunities like this renewable diesel project for our state. I thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. We will now move on to Deborah Hazen, who will be followed by Brandon Schilling. You will have 3 minutes to comment. Deborah Hazen, please unmute yourself, state your name, and spell it for the record.
Good evening. My name is Deborah Hazen, DEBORAHHAZEN. I am a fifth generation Clatskanie resident. I am speaking only for myself, but I know my view is shared by hundreds of local residents who have waited for decades for local family wage jobs and for revenues for our underfunded public service districts. I'm here to encourage you to consider the work that you have already done as you go through this EIS process. Specifically, during the environmental assessment that was recently completed for the Hermo Road extension, impacts related to this project were already considered. You can save duplication across assessment efforts and incorporate those results into this EIS. Not only is this prudent, but from a resource perspective, it would also indicate a commitment to expediency that should be paramount, specifically with regard to projects that provide solutions to the climate change crisis. NEXT plans to make renewable diesel fuel at this site. Renewable diesel burns 60 to 80% cleaner than fossil fuels. It also has multiple feedstock possibilities, many that in their own production also help reduce the amount of carbon in our atmosphere. Lastly, NEXT already completed a life cycle analysis using the GREET model from the California Air Resources Board. This is the gold standard for life cycle modeling. Life cycle modeling proves that the NEXT facility will reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 7 million tons each year. This is the equivalent air quality benefit of removing 1 million cars from the road each year that NEXT is in operation. This project is a net environmental benefit, not a negative impact. Our time to act is now. I urge you to lean on the credible work that has already been done in order to ensure that approval of this project happens as expediently as possible. Thank you for your time and consideration of these comments and encouragements.
Thank you for your comments. We will now move on to Brandon Schilling, who will be followed by Kathy Horowitz. You will have 3 minutes to comment. Brandon Schilling, please unmute yourself, state your name, and spell it for the record.
Good evening. My name is Brandon Schilling, BRANDON SCHILLING. I'd like to start off by saying that proponents of this project fail to speak to the applicable criteria during these hearings and instead regurgitate NEXT greenwashing advertisements, much like what we were subjected to at the beginning of this hearing. Their encouragement to expedite NEXT permits for jobs and tax revenue should be held accountable as a waste of crucial hearing time and a disrespect to democratic process. I would also like to begin by noting that NEXT Renewables and their team of lawyers only recently became aware of crucial levee structures in the drainage district, which speaks to their rushed process, dismissal of local concerns, incompetence, and the poor siting of this project. I urge the Army Corps of Engineers to have an honest consideration of the many relevant concerns regarding the proposal of this massive fracked gas dependent diesel refinery at a critical bend of the Columbia River, comprised of liquefiable soils and home to many endangered and threatened species. Additionally, your EIS should rigorously evaluate the known and potential impacts to the entire drainage district in which this project and its wetland mitigation are proposed. The drainage district is a nearly 6,000 acre island interconnected with sensitive waterways, boil point laden dikes, and high water flow rates just feet below the surface. The Beaver Drainage Improvement Company works hard to protect its residents from flooding and understands that an uncertified drainage district would compromise residents' flood insurance coverage, homesteads, and livelihoods. The Army Corps has admitted the size and complexity of this assessment is unprecedented. Please do not wave this proposal through as other regulatory agencies have. Our community's concerns continue to be drowned out by peddlers of tax revenue and jobs. This is absurd. Our health and safety is a priority, not a trade-off or a token worth gambling. The Army Corps is now positioned to lead by example in holding accountable the rushed, money-focused permitting process that this proposal has become. Furthermore, this proposed facility would consume nearly 600 acres of unique agricultural land. Soils that have taken thousands of years to produce and are not replicable would be lost to industrial development and tied up in wetland mitigation in perpetuity. Additionally, the patchwork wetland mitigation would not integrate well with neighboring homesteads and agricultural operations whose partnering dynamics could not possibly be fully addressed. Ironic that NEXT and the DSL would tout the productivity of wetlands regarding carbon sequestration while supporting a project that would be responsible for the destruction of countless acres of far more productive ecosystems. In a time when farmland is disappearing at exponential rates to urban growth, industrial development, wildfires, droughts, and corporate land grabs, approval of this project would be completely inappropriate. The Beaver Drainage District is for growing food and protecting our.
Thank you for your comments. We will now move on to Kathy Horowitz, who will be followed by Jerry Cole. You will have 3 minutes to comment. Kathy Horowitz, please unmute yourself, state your name, and spell it for the record.
Hi, my name's Kathy Horowitz, C-A-T-H-Y, Horowitz, H-U-R-O-W-I-T-Z. I'm here today to ask that you take into consideration the wide array of positive, long-lasting climate impacts that this project will have. Renewable diesel, we know, is cleaner, greener, and it replaces fossil fuel equivalent without modifications to engines or infrastructure. It burns 60 to 80% cleaner than its dirty diesel counterpart. The environmental benefits of the alternative fuel do not stop there because it's made of would-be waste products like fish grease, fry oil, and other biomass. There is also carbon savings in the development of its feedstock. The life cycle benefits of this green fuel should be considered as part of the EIS process. Also up for thoughtful consideration, the addition of more than 470 acres of wetlands. The wetland restoration project will create a special habitat to enhance our local ecosystems that support plants and animals, while also sequestering carbon and protecting the agricultural lands during flooding events. We deserve green fuel projects like this, projects that enhance the native species habitat, projects that help improve local community infrastructure like schools and fire departments through tax revenues, projects that provide living wages and long-term economic benefits, projects that have the future of the planet and the people who inhabit it at their core. This project is one we can support. This project is one that supports us, the environment, and the legacy we want to leave behind. Please be sure to include every benefit this project will bring to our area and beyond. We cannot hesitate when it comes to facing climate change. This renewable fuel facility is our opportunity to jump right in and prioritize the environment and the long-term sustainability of our climate and our community all at once. Do not let this pass by. I really appreciate your time and thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you for your comments. We will now move on to Jerry Cole, who will be followed by Sean Clark. You will have 3 minutes to comment. Jerry Cole, please unmute yourself, state your name, and spell it for the record. We will now move on to Sean Clark, who will be followed by Keith Wilson. You will have 3 minutes to comment. Sean Clark, please unmute yourself, state your name, and spell it for the record.
Hello, my name is Sean Clark, SEANCLARK. Thank you for giving me the time to speak today. I am the executive director for the Port of Columbia County, who is the owner of the Port Westward Industrial Park, where NEXT Renewable Fuels is to be sited. I'm here this evening in support of NEXT Renewable Fuels. I'm truly excited about the proposal of a renewable diesel project in Columbia County, not just because it will be great for our region, but because Oregon can and should lead the way when it comes to climate change solutions. There are clear Army Corps regulations that define your NEPA process and scope. During this EIS process, I encourage the Army Corps of Engineers to keep your review focused on the specific footprint of the proposed facility, driveway, roadway, and the rail being built as you assess the project, as that is the extent of the federal control. The railway already comes to Port Westward. Trucks already come to Port Westward. Ships already come to Port Westward. No new transportation pathways are being created with this project, so they should not be considered in this review process. Again, I urge you to take focused approach to the assessment as is outlined in the related regulations for an EIS. Those regulations should provide a guiding light throughout your work. I encourage you not to let an overzealous interpretation of regulations stall this EIS process and a project that has so many community, environmental, and economic benefits. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment. We will now move on to Keith Wilson, who will be followed by Anyette Bolanos. You will have 3 minutes to comment. Keith Wilson, please unmute yourself, state your name, and spell it for the record.
Thank you. My name is Keith Wilson, KEITHWILSON, and I am the President and CEO of Titan Freight Systems. Thank you to the Army Corps for this opportunity to testify in support of the NEXT Renewable project. My transportation company currently uses renewable diesel for nearly all its Oregon operation. We no longer use fossil fuels. Throughout Oregon, we have reduced our carbon emissions over 60% and our workplace poisons by 30%. And renewable diesel made those accomplishments easy, almost overnight. It is my fervent belief that the benefits of this project are being undersold. I basically think the NEXT Renewable Fuels project is a bit of a unicorn when it comes to industrial development. When, if ever, do we have an organization like this come in prepared to support our environment, our economy, and our community? Rarely, if ever. We are so fortunate to even have the possibility of hosting a project with this many positive benefits at Port Westward. It is good for our economy, yes, thanks to the green jobs promised and the tax revenues forecast. It is good for our community, yes, thanks to the resources it will bring and the added commitment to support local school districts with hands-on curriculum. Yes, it is truly wonderful on all these fronts, but most of all, it is going to provide tremendous benefits to our environment. Oregon is 26% above our emissions target that we set a decade ago and only climbing. When do we have an opportunity in almost one fell swoop to meet and get a jump on our climate emergency? Rarely, if ever. From the projected production of 50,000 barrels of renewable diesel a day, we can surmise that the next renewable diesel would mean a direct reduction in 7 million tons of greenhouse gases from our atmosphere. That's a net 7 million tons of carbon reduced. That's based on a completed life cycle greenhouse gas analysis that follows the GREET methodology. And as the Army Corps already knows, the GREET model is the leading methodology for determining greenhouse gases emissions data. Therefore, the completed life cycle analysis should be sufficient for Army Corps' requirements. Using renewable diesel would also mean reduced pollution and particulate matter in our air, tantamount to taking 1 million cars off the road every year. We must make plans to leave fossil fuels in the dust if we want to alleviate the impacts of climate change. And the NEXT Renewable Fuels project aims to do exactly that. Please take into consideration the magnitude of the positive benefits of this project for our economy, community, and perhaps most importantly, the environment, where the environment finally wins instead of always being second class in our nation. Solutions like this were needed yesterday. We cannot stall when they're so close to improving alternative fuel technologies that will have lasting positive impacts on the future of our planet. Please approach this EIS with the urgency it deserves. I appreciate your time and to share my comments with you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. We will now move on to Anyanet Bolanos, who will be followed by Melanie Vetch. You have 3 minutes to comment. Please unmute yourself, state your name, spell it for the record.
Hello, my name is Anjanet Benuelos Bolanos. Anjanet, A-N-J-A-N-E-T. Benuelos, B as in boy, A-N-U-E-L-O-S. Bolanos, B-O-L-A-N-O-S. I am an organizing business agent with LiUNA Labor's Local 737 here in Oregon. Thank you for allowing us the moment to speak and to support the NEXT Renewable Fuels project at Port Westward. It is widely accepted that the communities that are most vulnerable to the ravages of climate change are often those with the least power to impact the trajectory. I believe that this project can help Clatskanie and Columbia County become an exception to that rule. We have a once-in-a-life opportunity to work collaboratively with the company that is focused not only on creating a product that provides direct answers to the fossil fuel problem, but also focused on raising up the community which it's around. It is our turn for economic development that helps create thousands of family wage jobs while attracting more industry to our region. It will also generate much needed tax revenue for our local schools, public safety, and other community services. And it will restore important wetland habitat that supports the diverse, healthy ecosystem. I encourage the Army Corps of Engineers to take in consideration the incredible boost this project will bring to the Columbia County, not just in the terms of jobs and renewable fuel benefits, but also from the tax revenue and the infrastructure perspective. We deserve to be at the helm of the exciting project like these, especially the ones that raise the communities up in its awakening. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your comments. We will now move on to Melanie Veach, who will be followed by Kristen Edmark. You will have 3 minutes to comment. Melanie Veach, please unmute yourself, state your name, and spell it for the record. We will now move on to Kristen Edmark, who will be followed by Mary Duval. You will have 3 minutes to comment. Kristen Edmark, please unmute yourself, state your name, and spell it for the record.
Hello, my name is Kristen Edmark, K-R-I-S-T-I-N-E-D-M-A-R-K. Thank you for letting me comment. There are so many reasons why Port Westward is the wrong place for this facility, but there are two things that I especially want to emphasize. First is that all parts of the site necessary for the operation must be considered part of the site itself, including all expansion of the rail yard, all use of the dock, including the Columbia River affected, including the warming of the river, the methane powered energy plant and its associated pumping, and the transloading, all chemical storage, and even chemical storage that is placed at more stable ground if that happens. Waste preparation, I didn't hear anything about that. And the disposal area. Oftentimes wastewater has to be cooled or treated prior to discharge to the drainage district. Please consider all of these things. All the components necessary for operation of the plant must be considered an integral part of the site. Second, please include the impact of the increased methane demand on world, U.S., and climate goals. Methane increase is relevant to this project because of the present existential threat. Please require analysis of the effect of promotion of the use of fossil fuels. All diesel adds greenhouse gas. Presently, biodiesel is mixed oftentimes with drilled diesel. Please evaluate the amount that expanded methane and diesel use slows the transition to fossil-free energy. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We will now move on to Mary Duval. You will have 3 minutes to comment. Mary Duval, please unmute yourself, state your name and spell it for the record.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Mary Duval, Maryduvall. I'm a 32-year resident of Columbia County. I urge the Corps to do a broad and deep analysis of all the direct, indirect, and cumulative impacts of the proposed refinery and rail yard. The area around Port Westward and the county itself is rural and basically agricultural in nature. Maintaining agriculture in this state is one of the state goals. The landscape is influenced by the mighty Columbia River, which is in large part swampland, wetland, wonderful for growing commercial products, especially fir, cedar, alder, hemlock, spruce, cottonwood, and berries of all kinds. Blueberries, famous for their health value, blackberries, thimbleberries, apples, walnuts, mint, marketable flowers, as well as providing habitat for fish, birds, deer, elk, cougar, coyote, rabbits, and all sorts of wild bees, butterflies, and humans. For the Port Commission to advocate for petroleum industrial projects such as that proposed by NEXT is an outrage to the environmental context which this proposed project would endanger. The environment I described above is fragile. Science tells us it is a highly vulnerable area because of the nature of the river-related soils, often described as jello soils. It is a highly vulnerable area because of old growth cottonwood trees and salmon habitat in a time when salmon are endangered. It's a highly vulnerable to weakened dikes in a time of climate change when sea rise will impact a tidal river like the Columbia. It is highly vulnerable to a massive destruction when the expected major earthquake arrives. Additionally, the entire county is vulnerable because it lacks infrastructure able to contain the scope of this project. Curvy two-lane county roads cannot support the additional traffic the project requires. The train traffic will impact the entire county because the old line cuts across the traffic patterns of South County with its denser population. And once trains get to the port, will they bring their own kind of danger to the vulnerabilities described above? I have not even addressed the issue of possible human error or leaking and particulate matter and all the issues of air quality, danger to the river, danger to the farms, danger to the drainage district. I will leave that to others to enumerate. All over the world, ports are reassessing how they continue and how they go forward in the context of knowledge about environmental vulnerabilities, in the greater context of the realities of climate change, no longer rushing to support the petroleum industry, even those that appear to be sort of green. Ports are now looking to support agriculture, solar arrays, turning toward projects sustainable.
Thank you for your comments. We will now move on to Melanie Veach. You will have 3 minutes to comment. Melanie, please unmute yourself, state your name, and spell it for the record.
Hi, this is Melanie Veach, Melanie, Veach, Veach. Good evening. I am the Vice President of the Chamber of Commerce for Clatskanie. I'm here to support NEXT Renewable Fuels and to commend the Army Corps of Engineers for their diligence in the EIS process. In your diligence, it is my opinion that a thorough review of the economic impact should not be overlooked, but rather studied and highlighted as a huge community benefit. This project is unlike any other recent project in the Columbia County, in that it prioritizes doing the right thing for the planet while also keeping the people of our rural county at its core. From the family wage job opportunities that NEXT has already worked with local unions to ensure are prioritized for local residents, to the long-term commitment to developing and supporting the implementation of creative curriculum in our schools as part of the wetland restoration. There are miles of benefits to consider. I know that the focus is on the environment in an EIS, but the environment would be nothing without the incredible community that protects it. A rural community that needs economic opportunities like this, like never before, especially after more than 2 years under the distress of a pandemic. When I say opportunities, I don't just mean the green high wage jobs that are related to the actual project, but also the benefit of the tax revenues, port fees, and resulting economic effects those resources will bring. People making decent wages will bring more businesses to our local cafes, shops, and other businesses. Increased tax revenues will help us overcome infrastructure hurdles that become more pressing by the day. The NEXT Renewables Diesel project will make that all possible, and we shouldn't shy away from it. In closing, I would urge the Army Corps of Engineers focus your review on the powerful economic and community impacts that the renewable diesel facility will create for our natural community and our environment and our future. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. There are no remaining speakers. If you had difficulty unmuting yourself, you may request to comment during the, oh, just kidding. We're gonna have one more. Carol Sweet, you will now have 3 minutes to comment. Carol, please unmute yourself, state your name, and spell it for the record.
Carol Sweet, CarrollSweet. I'm the chair of Envision Columbia County. And I just wanted to bring up a couple of things. I feel like it's great to be having a comprehensive environmental impact statement. I don't understand how that would just keep right in the exact framework of the land they own and the building. It impacts the environment, impacts all of the things around it. We stand to lose a very prosperous farm if the plans go as we've been told, and we may be, and another farm on the other side. I also am very concerned about the earthquake issue, which Oregon is not really mentioned for many years. And it now seems like that's becoming more and more a reality. We've even got a committee that's studying it and looking at it. And one of the most vulnerable spots is Port Westward. I think that putting something that's going to have the kind of material that could be pushed into the Columbia River is a relatively frightening thing. We would want all of the advantages of a good paying job thing in our community, but we also don't want to damage what's already here. If you're going to have an impact on already prosperous businesses, I say no. So I do hope that you look at not just the perimeters of the project, but the outlying mitigation areas, the other things that surround it, and let's take a really close look at what might happen to us if this project were to go forward. We have been with this project as an organization for quite a few years, and we've noticed a lot of changes. There were not going to be any trains. Now we're going to have trains in case the river stops working. And we're very concerned about the river stopping working because that's not something we had in the plan. Anyway, I'm glad that you're doing this. I hope that it works well. And thank you for listening to my comments.
We just want to do one last call for commenters. If you signed up and were not able to give your comment yet, please raise your hand on the Zoom feature or let us know in the chat feature that you would like to comment and are with us right now. We will give another 30 seconds to 1 minute for anyone who wants one last chance for today. There are no remaining speakers. If you had difficulty unmuting yourself, you may request a comment during the scoping meeting tomorrow from 1 to 3 p.m. The comment period remains open for written comments until June 9th. Thank you for your attendance and input this evening. Have a great night.